Good afternoon, everyone. We are live here, about to get started. Going to be talking about email today. And yeah, it's gonna be a good one. We'll start off with just the first 20 minutes or so of learning about email, picking a CRM, how to use it, and then we will move to some live Q&A, take some folks' challenges, and hopefully help people get through a few problems or issues they might be facing related to anything really with regard to digital communications, not just email. So hopefully we get some folks here, and as you're joining, please appreciate you just saying hello in the comments, letting us know you're here, who you're with, what brings you here today, anything else you want to share. So thank you for being here. Today is particularly relevant, the topic, because it also happens to be the day that we send out our weekly newsletter. So this feels very relevant today. I know we've had questions in the past of like, what's the system that we're using to do this all? It's called StreamYard. It's really handy, and I think hopefully y'all tell us, gives a good visual experience, allows for some controls, especially posting comments and putting those up on the screen. Pretty handy. With that said, like I said, thanks for being here. This is the fourth installment of our support hours, which is a thing we do weekly. We'll keep doing it for 2 more weeks, where we spend about 20 minutes up front sharing skills and things that people who are interested in hopefully are interested in learning around digital communications, and then spend the latter part of the call taking questions from anyone who joins, and working through any challenges that folks might have, and hopefully, usually I think we always come to an answer, or at least some direction. So if you're just joining, please feel free to think about what digital communication challenges you might have, and to pose those to the group. I am joined today by Evan O'Neill, who works on a variety of different things related to digital communications for Houston in Action, which includes the topic today, which is email. And so we'll be hearing from Evan in just a little bit. And I'll just do a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. One of the things that we have promised you all through this series that we've been moving through is that the next episode, the next support hour next week at 1 o'clock. Facebook Live, it will actually be decided by you all. So this is your last opportunity to throw your topics into the ring. It's our wild card event, which will be next Wednesday at this time. So please do let us know. I don't know if anyone has that link handy and can drop it in the comments, but we are looking for your feedback on what to present in our 5th installation of digital communications support hours. If you're just joining us, we're about to get started. Thank you very much, and please just drop your name and organization into the comments and say hello. Let us know that you're here, that you're out there. We really appreciate it. So with that, I will go ahead and hand it over to Evan. We're like I said, going to spend about 20 minutes talking about some stuff. Email today is the topic, and then the last half of the call, taking your questions and challenges. So with that, Evan, thank you.
All right, just getting my screen share set up. Bear with me just 1 second.
Yeah. Hey, Ray, how's it going? Thanks for being here. I hope you've got some email challenges for us, or just any digital communications challenges. But what am I talking about, Ray? You do a great job. I enjoy your Instagram quite a bit.
Cool. All right. Cool. Then yeah, we're ready to start. Hi, Ray. Thanks for joining us. So yeah, kind of same as always. If anyone has a question at any point, please let one of us know, comment in there, and we can address it pretty quickly. So we're talking about newsletters this week, which is a very broad category, and there's a lot of different techniques and tools and best practices that are very dependent on different uses. It's not as simple as it was back in the AOL days. And so it would, I think it would really help and be productive for a good conversation if anyone wanted to share the problems or issues that they have or what their needs are too. I think we'll find out most of the sections are going to be questions, and the answers will be, it depends. Depends on what your goals are, what your organizations are. Anyway, yeah, on to email. Email, the thing that both ties us all together and is probably the bane of a lot of people's existences. First, quick links before we get started. So the Houston in Action team is developing a lot of resources that can be shared, especially for census use. And that is all at fresh content, HoustonInAction.org/fresh content. We'll drop the link into the comments in a second. And then we're also keeping a toolkit of all the census resources that we come across that are not developed by our team, and also ones developed by our team at Census Toolkit. So if you're looking for any kind of census resources, these are some great sources. And also, if there's something you want to see on there, just let us know. Either in the comments, email, a million ways to get in touch. So moving on, kind of the overview of what we're going to talk today is how to select an email CRM. I don't remember what CRM stands for. It's customer relation management. I got it. Basically, this is like the program that will handle the email list and sending out the newsletters. And then, so we'll go through kind of some of the most frequently used ones that I've used a lot and that we might have some pros and cons for. Then setting up a mailing list, because that's going to be the first thing you do. Then, how to start collecting email addresses from your site. Tips on writing and kind of how best to get people's attention. And part of that is going to be time to send the emails to. So the first one, what tools are out there? There's a ton of them. There's so many that it's impossible to keep track. But kind of identified 3 that I think are very functional at different levels. And I have a lot of personal experience working in all of these. And would especially be very happy to share any information that I have on these beyond what's going to be on the slides. So kind of the 3 that I picked out to highlight are MailChimp, Action Network, and EveryAction. So MailChimp is kind of the most general one out there. You've probably seen ads for it. It's a very easy, intuitive to use. Basically, the only functionality there is create a sign-up form, create an email list, and then send out emails. And that's a con of it. It doesn't connect to other systems that well. It's kind of just its own thing. But the upside is it's really easy to use. There's a ton of templates, and it's free up to 2,000 contacts. So yeah, this is the link to pricing on that. I think most organizations are going to work really well with either the free plan or the $10 a month plan. Yeah, I feel like it's good. It works for small businesses, works for organizations. If it falls short if you start with any like organizing goals, which the next two kind of fill in pretty well there. But if you just want to send out a newsletter, I feel like MailChimp is the way to go. And then Action Network is another one that we use quite frequently. This is not the one that Houston in Action uses now, but other projects we work on do use this. And I think it's really good. The pricing is about $10 a month. It's based on how many emails overall you send. So that's how many newsletters you send out in 1 month times the like total number of subscribers that you have. So if you have 1,000 subscribers and you're going to send out 2 newsletters a month, then you're sending out 2,000 emails a month. And I think around that level, it's $10 a month, and then scales up based on if you have more subscribers or if you send out more frequent updates. So some of the pros are it connects to other tasks really well. So it does the email kind of the same that all of them do. But you can also do forms kind of with more options to specify people's interests and get a lot more information from them. Also does fundraising and petitions really well. So I know a lot of organizations in this network are kind of advocacy, nonprofit based. So yeah, I think ability to fundraise directly from the list without having, and it uses ActBlue, I believe, is the transaction processor there. So it's good for fundraising because you don't need to integrate too much else there. It's really good for petitions too, which can be a great way to understand what tangible issues people in your network are interested in. So that's all good. The cons are, it's not super intuitive, but it's not that hard. Though there's not the level of templates that are provided the same way that MailChimp has it. So you'll have to do a lot of the creation side on your own there. It's not too hard, but it's a steeper learning curve than MailChimp. You also have to go through this, like what I found to be a pretty long process of proving that you're a progressive. So it's good that they don't let, really regressive organizations onto this platform, but it took a few emails to prove that the organizations I've been working with are liberal. Though of course as nonprofits you can't identify parts of them, but basically to prove that the issues you're working on are helpful and good. And then EveryAction is the system that Houston in Action uses. So this is a lot pricier. It's around $140 a month, but this kind of covers everything. There's a ton of functionality built into the system. It's also really good because there's it uses the fast action ID that a lot of other organizations use. So if people are involved in the kind of progressive advocacy world, then they're already going to have the login to where it's kind of like one click to sign up for your list. Beyond that, you can do forms, events. It connects to, this is part of the VAN access or the voter network. And so if you're doing canvassing, in-person campaigns, it kind of all integrates together, which is really cool. That's also kind of the downside of it too, that there's a really steep learning curve to be able to use everything, which if you look at the total functionality, $140 a month is pretty fair price for it, but you kind of need like a master's degree to figure out how to use it all, or a lot of time, or a big team. Also, no templates at all. So it's not something that you really like get off the ground with immediately. So it requires a lot of investment, both like financially and effort wise. But if you have a very like ambitious digital strategy, this is kind of the standard bearer for that. So once you select the one that you're going to use, then the first step is always going to be setting up your email list. And so put in a few best practices here. The first one that I think is one of the most important things you can do is make sure to segment your lists by both where you got them from and by interest. So on your sign up sheet, it's always a really good idea to have people check off like specifically what they're interested in. So speaking for Youth in Action, there's census work, there's voter engagement, there's civic engagement, and then a lot of kind of more granular detail beneath that. But that way, if somebody is only interested in the census, then you can make sure that they're tagged as that, so you can only communicate, or you can only send communications about the census to them. And same goes for any interest that they have. So that way they're not getting stuff that they're not interested in. So the newsletters will be kind of less intrusive that way. So once you have, and then also by source, I find that's always good to, if you have like in-person signups, website signups, and then, maybe like canvassers are getting people to sign up. It's always good to know where they came from too, so you can see the overall numbers and be able to gauge, where you're getting your people from.
And Evan, I'll add to that it's also helpful for targeting too. You kind of get a sense then of like who has what level of knowledge with what you might be sharing, and you can kind of write your content to be best suited for those whoever's experience you might have. I was just going to go back to the segmenting piece and like people's interests too. Like it's so critical for delivery rates as well. If you want to maintain a high delivery rate, you want to make sure that you have a very low unsubscribe rate, and you also want to have a good open rate. The more that people are either deprioritizing or not opening or unsubscribing, it can affect your delivery rate. And ultimately, if you have people who are just kind of getting stuff that is not relevant to them, that they don't feel like they asked for, it's a quick way to lose credibility and not be able to deliver as strongly.
Yeah. Thanks for adding that on. That's such an important part. And then kind of going off of that too, as you have the ability and kind of get to know what patterns emerge, pruning the lists is another really good one too. And that is looking at who's opening your emails, who's just deleting them. Because if somebody is not interested, maybe somehow found themselves on the list, didn't unsubscribe, but like is not interested in your emails, then it's probably best for all involved to just, not be sending them anymore. So that way your open percentage is going to go up. And you also are able to get rid of a risk for somebody reporting as spam, which is another really bad factor. And so any one of these services has some ways to do that, and look at like who hasn't opened up an email, and just by looking at some of the analytics reports, it's a good idea every so often to see who's engaged. You can also see like who's opening every single one, and then I know everyone here is likely to work in a pretty close community, and if you see somebody who is clicking on a lot of links, opening up a lot of emails. It's also always pretty helpful to reach out to them and kind of do that as a way to better understand your audience. But yeah, getting those engagement numbers up is both a really good goal to report and really important for deliverability rate too. And then the last one that's easiest to do, but I think most important of all of them, is to have an easy opt-out process. And maybe even talk about it in the email that I think for Houston in Action, we say, like, if you're not into this, no problem, unsubscribe at this link at the bottom. And don't do the like trying to guilt people into it, which I see a lot of people do, which like only gets me to opt out even quicker, where it's like, oh, if you're sure you want to break up with us, and it's kind of annoying. So just if somebody doesn't want to get the emails anymore, there's a ton of different reasons why. It doesn't even mean that they're not supporting your organization. But yeah, just make it easy for them. And the 3 platforms that we talked about have options to make that pretty easy. So then content, this is kind of where you really get up and running. Now that you have your list, you have the tool that you want to use. Oh, I went the wrong way. So then, yeah, how do you put something together that's going to keep their interest? The first question, and this is where it really gets into that, well, it depends world, is what are the goals of the newsletter? The first question I think is good to ask is email going to be the best way to reach the people that you want to reach? Is that where the people who are in your network spend their time? Because it's, even at the MailChimp end where it's kind of it's less of a financial investment and it's a lot more intuitive to get started, these are still major investments of time. I know every newsletter I've ever worked on, it's always getting close to the deadline. There's so much effort that goes into assembling the right content, writing, editing, creating graphics. So it's something to keep in mind from the start, that this is not the kind of thing that you spend an hour on a week and you're going to have a successful strategy. Like, you need to know from the start, this is going to be a big investment of time. And if you're going to invest that time, then what do you want out of it? I can imagine a lot of organizations might have fundraising as a goal. I think digital organizing is often a goal of like informing people what you're doing and building support, getting people to take action on behalf of the cause that you're advocating for. And then there's some that are kind of like Houston Action as the purpose of the newsletter is informational, to let everybody know what is happening in this world and direct their interest towards that. But yeah, I think really, as with any project, just from the start, being able to get very granular about what goals you have. And, if it's vanity, that's okay too, but just know that that's the goal. Oftentimes newsletters are more about vanity and just getting in front of people's eyes than a specific goal. But I can think of a few in the past that I worked on like that. But yeah, setting that out, and then that'll help inform some of the decisions for the questions that we come across later. So yeah, then, and this is tied to goal formulation, but learn about your audience. Like, who are you going to be talking to? What's their relationship to email? What do you want them to do? Again, like fundraising, information, action are oftentimes the goals, but yeah, like, is your audience going to do one of those? And then depending on which one, like, how do you get them to? Is it an emotional appeal? Is it a scientific appeal? Is it the ones that are like saying like, oh, we need this much money or we're not going to be able to keep going? Yeah, there's so many different directions, but with very open-ended stuff, I think asking these questions are the best way for you to be able to make the decisions about your email communications that are best. And then once you've kind of set goals, you have some idea of who you're talking to, then the next step is going to be how to structure your content. I always start out with like a outline where there's going to be a few different sections, like news headlines, action opportunities, and then like data is one that is a structure that has worked pretty well in the past. But again, it's all about who you're talking to and what your organization does and what the goals are. One thing that's always good after a few newsletters is you can look at the analytics report, and each link will give information about how many clicks it got. And then you can kind of see where people pay attention. It's mostly, I'd say it's like 70% at the top, probably 20% at the very bottom, and then everything in between is about 10% of the overall click rates in terms of the newsletters I've worked on. I think those numbers match up to other people's experiences pretty well. If you've looked at this before and have different experience or the same one, please jump in. But it's good to know that if you have an action, the top or at the very bottom is where you're going to want to focus the time. Then yeah, what's your visual? Yeah, I think the newsletters where it's just plain text is going to get lost really quickly. So having some visual element is going to be really helpful, both to like convey what the purpose of the email is, what the subject, what the goal is, but then also just to, people like looking at images. So something to communicate the brand and just kind of visually get interest. Yeah, then next kind of best practice, it's always good to be brief whenever possible. I think everybody has a lot of emails to read, a lot of social media posts to read, a lot of articles to read, a lot of everything to read. So when you can, just being as brief as possible is good. I think people on the other side are going to really appreciate that because it's respectful of their time. It's also going to be easier on you. It's kind of the biggest upside to brief and minimalist writing is there's less to edit. But of course, you don't want to go too far. Like part of it is tone and language that's right for your organization. But then the biggest question is, what is the action that you want people to take? And then what's the value of sending this newsletter? So yeah, I mean, the action could be anything from donate $27 to tell a friend about this, forward this to a friend, post this on social media, sign a petition, call your city council person, or just be aware of this thing that we're telling you about. Like, be aware about the census and that it's important to get your community engaged in it. And then what's the value is kind of the key to that. Like, how does the email that you're sending out support that action? It's basically before you send it out, like a justify your existence to the email. And if there's no value, I mean, bosses probably feel different about it, but I feel like if there's no value, then, you can save everybody the time. But really the better answer there is figure out how to make the email newsletter something that directly supports the action and is directly relevant to the people who are going to be receiving it too. Then, yeah, branding, and this is assuming you're sending it out on behalf of an organization. Branding is kind of this, is something that is bigger than just a logo. It's, kind of an entire feeling. And so having visuals that support the brand, the personality that your organization has is really important. So that's whether you're getting a designer to make it or whether it's just a photo. You want to have something that matches as the main visual, like the overall feeling of what you want to convey. Colors, if anybody tuned in last week, we talked about that a lot. But it's always good to just have the hex codes for the brand color and any supporting colors that you have. So then you can get those input pretty quickly. I would say two colors plus black and white is great for a newsletter. It definitely wouldn't go any above 3 colors in black and white. And then tone and language is another part of this kind of branding world that's much bigger, even than the visuals, even more than the logo, colors, the fonts. And this is an outcome of getting to know your audience, getting to know like who you're talking to. Is you both want to have the right tone and the right language. And so, I mean, that applies to overall like English, Spanish, Vietnamese language, but also the kind of words that you use, like what level of education are you writing for, what background, what level of jargon. And a big one to always think about is how much do the people you're talking about know the jargon in your field? Because I think everybody, especially in this world, has stuff that we feel like everybody probably knows because it's because we spend so much time in this world. But how if your audience are just random people who don't have much tie to progressive organizing advocacy, then are they going to know the same terms that you might feel everybody knows? So getting some understanding of that is really good. And then tone is a really important aspect of that too. Do you want the email to sound urgent, that like you have to take action, or this is, a really dire thing, or do you want it to be uplifting, optimistic? Do you want it to be humorous? I feel like a humorous email is gonna, for me, resonate a lot better than a really urgent, like, stop this from happening right now. Sometimes there's times when I'll get that and it feels a little stressful or a little out of reach. Figuring out the right balance of tone, which, I suspect if for people who've thought about broad communications for organizations, this has probably come up before. Wanting to have a tone that matches and is a good representation is really important too. And then, getting people to pay attention. The hardest thing in any field to do. Subject lines are a really important way to do this. I think best practices are like, don't have an annoying subject line. There's some groups. And we will start the Q&A in just a minute. There's some that I can think of, like Wikipedia's subject lines were so bad. There was stuff like, hey, about yesterday, or hey, we need to talk. I was like, what? Why are you doing that? I think the Obama campaign in 2008 probably started this trend of like personal sounding subject lines that would get you to open it. It might have worked for him, but chances are you're not Obama and this is in 2008. So like, don't try. Preview text is really important too. There's that like first line that shows up in a lot of email clients and Gmail especially. And if you have something in addition to a subject line that's going to get people's attention, then like that's the place to really hook somebody to. Avoid cliches, overuse punctuation. Like if I see something with multiple exclamation points, unless it's like something I feel like a deep affinity towards, I'm just going to delete it. Emojis are something that actually have been shown to get good engagement rate. I feel pretty positive on emojis. I'd say try putting an emoji in your newsletter and see what happens. then yeah, the content of the email, and this goes to being brief, is to try for one goal, one subject, and then ask like, what is the value of it? Timing is something that I think like anybody who tells you they know the right time to send an email, I don't believe it. And there's a lot of thought that like Wednesday or Thursday is going to be the best time, but there's a ton of conflicting information out there. The only true experience tested advice is just avoid between 10 p.m. to 9 a.m. You don't want to be in that wave where like people get to their computer or wake up and have a ton of emails. So yeah, kind of any point after people have like deleted the wave of overnight emails. I think from there, it's really all about trial and error. Like, who are you talking to? How do they use email? How do they use technology? Like, what supports your goal the most? There's a lot of advice that will say like avoid dinner time, but then I think if you want people to discuss something, maybe right before dinner time is the best. So yeah, it's another one where I can't give just one piece of advice. I think it's all from asking questions and trial and error too, and looking at analytics. And then, yeah, that was from last week. So yeah, let's open up question and answer. Yeah, do you send emails? Do you want to send emails? Do you have any thoughts on any of this? So yeah, any experiences or questions? We'd love to hear it.
Yeah, Evan, I was just going to echo what you were saying about the timing too, which is that I don't think, I'm so curious to see who has what kind of updated data when it comes to just habits and like when people are most likely to do X, Y, or Z online now that, everybody has been social distancing or in isolation or more online now for, going on 2 months. I think it's going to upset all of those things that even, whether people thought they could predict them or not. And who knows, maybe it'll be totally inconsistent and there will be no, clear cut trends. So yeah, I feel like all that I can think to do now on our own, like in our own work, is just to test and see what is working for our particular groups. I think that's how we landed. Well, in part, that's how we landed on, Thursday mornings. I think early in the week actually did get us more opens, but Thursday, balanced with other things affecting, ended up being where we were. So it looks like Nelson has a question. Thank you, Nelson. Nelson's question says, what has worked well for growing email lists when starting from scratch? Oh, this question. Evan, I don't know your experience. I could share some of mine, but.
Sure, yeah. Do you want to share, and then I can share some supporting stuff too?
Yeah, I think
my mentality on this has come from you, so I was going to say, yeah, that sounds cool.
Well, I mean, I think it falls into your "it depends" bucket, right? Like you're trying to grow your email list. It really depends on ultimately like what your goals are. There are ways to grow a list very quickly from nothing, but you will often have to answer the question of whether or not the people in your list are as interested or engaged or have the potential or the are going to open your email if you haven't spent time developing a relationship with them, whether that be on the ground, face to face, when that was a thing that we could do, or even online, developed a relationship through them and put them through, sort of like a ladder of engagement where they started to interface with you online on social media, or and then eventually they signed a petition, and then that's how you got their email address, and then you followed up with them. And there is this relational component that would tend to tend to mean that having a list made up of folks that you've developed a relationship with over time might have a different value for your group. So I think it's like a lot of things. Like if you fast and paid for or bought lists, or even using advertising to grow your list, you always run the risk of like those being maybe people who aren't as engaged as or as interested, or even as like authentically interested in what you're working on. But that's okay too. Like it doesn't, sometimes that's what you need to do, and it's purely a numbers game of like, hey, we need to get this message out to as many people as we can and get whatever result we can as a result of it. I think it goes back to your organizing strategy if you're trying to build relationships with those folks over time, or if you're really playing a numbers game instead. So depending on the circumstances, there's potentially both of those approaches could be valid.
Yeah. I agree with all of that. Probably the one that I can think of kind of outside of that scenario is something that's worked really well for me in the past has been asking the question of whether you want the newsletters to be coming from an organization or a person at the organization. And I've found good success with I found much better success with the email coming from a person at the organization. So, like from a person's email address, have a letter written, from the perspective of the person who's sending it, signed by them. And my thought is that people are, and it's something that I do too, if I know that like there's a human being on the other side of it, I'm going to be much more likely to pay attention to it than if it feels organizational. Maybe that's because I know that you can see the analytics of who opened and who didn't. I still can remember who's unsubscribed from newsletters that I did 5 years ago. Still hurts. I don't know. I guess I feel like on a more broad level, if it's coming from a person, it's more authentic, more real than if it's coming from just an organization where it feels more like transactional. So then, like, I'm much more likely to forward an email from somebody who, like, I think of as a person instead of an organization. So I feel that like natural growth I've seen happen, and open rates happen from like connection to a human being. So making your newsletter feel like personal. It doesn't have to look like a text-only email, but
y'all can't see Nelson, but we can see Nelson, and Nelson's given 2 thumbs up.
Cool.
Thank you, Nelson.
It could sound like Nelson is like in our imagination.
Our imaginary friend.
Yeah.
Nelson, yeah.
Nelson's always giving me 2 thumbs up.
I know. I don't know if you've encountered this or not. But Evan, have you ever worked on anything that was, because we were talking about like the text-based email. I always wonder about this. Like, there is a part of me, and I think like, I don't know if you remember when like ads became like in the history of the internet, when ads became more like readily displayed. Probably at the advent of like Google Ads display network and things like that, like before we had a need for ad blockers, that like my mind, and I do this now naturally, but like my mind started to just like tune out ads. Like I knew that like that section of the web page was like a tower banner and I was going to ignore it. And that first thing at the top was, and I started to tune it out, and then ad people started getting more creative and making it unavoidable to avoid ads, or nearly impossible to avoid ads. Anyway, my point is that oftentimes when I open an email, if it appears to be like a newsletter, or even sometimes have a standard header or something, like sometimes I will, like the more produced it looks, like the more inclined I am to just go bloop, delete. I don't know if you've ever taken a strategy of like making an email look like just a regular email, like one from one email address to another. And if that's ever been effective.
I have
a long-winded question. Sorry?
I haven't, but I like the idea a lot. Can we do that?
Well, I mean, we have a little bit for those who are on the call just joining. Please say hello in the chat because we'd love to know you're here. But we have a little bit with some of the updates during Census Week, and then some recent updates outside the newsletter. We've just taken like a totally like stripped down approach. And those, and they come from an individual, they come from Anna. And I think those have gotten, good attention. I think because, and maybe it is in part that they just look like, regular emails from Anna. But who knows? Also, Anna's got a lot of pull. Anna, if you're on this, just in case Anna's on this Facebook Live.
She can always watch later.
That's right. In case you didn't know, Anna, you've got a lot of pull. And I guess have you seen any other design approaches that have been particularly effective in any of your work?
I have, but it's well, I think from the design perspective, there's not really anything that I would consider like a graphic design issue that really works too much better or not. I think like short headers or something, it's really good to like just get into the content. But yeah, I feel like to me it's more of the like larger picture design of like, not sending out too frequently, sending it at a time that makes sense, or like a time that can be repeatable to where, like, okay, like the second Thursday of every month, I'm going to get an email from this place. Definitely like not overdoing it. Because I can think even like the causes that I'm like most tied to, everyone has a certain point at which it becomes too much if it is a lot. Like no matter how much they support your organization or your campaign or anything. Maybe, and the ones that have an option to like go down to like once a month or once a week are good, but yeah, there's always going to be a point where it's too much, like no matter how passionate of a supporter you have. I like the idea of a kind of under-designed newsletter too.
It eliminates all your font issues.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Graphics issues. Yeah. I don't know how much
it's mobile responsive too.
Yeah. I think it still sends it in a table, which is the weird part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if does a regular email send, like, I guess, like, does something from Gmail still send it in a table?
I don't know. I never looked at the source code for that.
Yeah. But yeah, experimental design. I guess another experimental design with email is just, I don't know if we talked about it earlier or not, but one thing that I've become more and more of a fan of when possible, especially for lists or groups that already have a rhythm, is stepping outside the rhythm for a single subject subject emails. So like you might be a regular updater, like a weekly email or monthly newsletter, what have you. But finding something that is either, of high value and interest to your audience or is just really important and timely, and sending an email that's focused just explicitly on that, like kind of disrupts the repetition while also like putting a lot of emphasis on one thing, one call to action, one topic, uncomplicated and simple, can often be effective in breaking through, especially if you use a different sender name, a different from email, and mix up your subject line, obviously. Yeah. If you're just joining, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Say hello, let us know you're here. We're taking digital communications challenges and questions. So if you have any questions or challenges you've been facing, we'd love to hear from you about them, and help you work through them.
Or if any people are challenges for you, put them on and we'll talk some sense into them.
Yeah, just send them this link and we can put you on the live stream, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call on Nelson, because Nelson said that he was curious about some of the content, and he's already asked one question, but I don't know if Nelson has another question that he's been dying to know the answer to and hasn't had time to ask us in our many other gatherings. This burning question. But yeah, because I mean, Nelson, I guess I think of you because as an entrepreneur yourself, as someone who's out there, looking to make new relationships and keep your audience. I think probably mostly through social media. I don't know if you have any past experience with email, or if you have any if it's something that y'all have explored and moved on from, or if it's something y'all want to do more. What are some good examples of newsletters done right other than Houston Actions? Gosh, that's a great question. I like this question a lot. I also think that the answer is really subjective, so I can give my brief answer, Evan, and then if you have some of your own thoughts, I'm sure. I think for me, honestly, like as soon as someone says newsletter, like I'm already tuning out. So if like you have newsletter in your subject line, there's a strong chance that unless like I already know. The examples I can think of are actually really, first of all, they wouldn't be newsletters, because I think for the most part, like there is not a regular newsletter that I read, like I religiously read. The things that stand out to me right now in just like an inbox that's like kind of flowing over are people who have a unique voice. So like if your subject line does kind of like catch me because you're kind of you have a different approach on something, or you're going to tell me something that's not what I expected. Like, you have the cure to coronavirus or something. Then I'm more likely to open that up. And then I think just inside the ones that lately I have been opening that are oh God, I'm not going to remember the line, but because I was in an email training, I signed up for this cosmetics line newsletter that I get on a regular basis. And I open it simply because it's really nice to look at. Like it's just beautiful. And I don't wear any makeup myself. So I very infrequently have any need for anything that they're selling, but the design is just really nice, and I open it up. I'll find it and I'll put it in the Slack or in the comments while Evan's answering.
Yeah. Yeah, there's one that it's for this book company called Read Only Memory. And yeah, I just really like the design of it. But the one that if anybody that works with me is probably sick of me talking about this, but the newsletter that I think is like the best model right now, it's actually on the Substack platform, which is for journalists to get like subscriptions, and so you can do a free newsletter and also have like a paid tier for it. It's by a climate crisis journalist. Her name's Emily Atkin. She used to work for New Republic and now just writes climate stuff for everyone. And so it's about 3 times a week, and it's just so it's called Heated. And the explanation is a newsletter for people who are pissed off about the climate crisis. And so it's always great subject lines. Like I just pulled up the ones from the past week, and like Senate looks to confirm climate idiot is one of them. Feeling hot is another one. But it that like kind of goes to the like personality side. Is she's just like a younger journalist who is like really like legitimately pissed off about the climate. And it comes through in like every sentence there. And it's like, and the domain for it is heated.world. So it's like, yeah, just something like personal, kind of humorous from somebody who like cares.
Yeah, that reminds me too of, I really appreciated this email that was coming through for a while that isn't any longer, but it was basically like 10 basically like 10 victories, 10 wonderful successes. It would come through once a week that happened in the previous week. It was global, so it was nice to like step outside of like American politics too. It was but it was very human. It felt very relatable, and I would definitely open that. But I think they've stopped. It's a hard one to keep up. So.
There's no more victories. There are no more. Nothing good happens anymore. So why make this letter?
I just added the makeup line that I'm subscribed to. We had a question from Thea. What is the difference between HTML and text email? And I think this will probably be our last question before we close it out.
Yeah, so HTML that's like the basic language of the website. So, there's always like a text box, but then it converts the text into HTML code. So there's like header tags, paragraph tags, div tags. It's just complicated. I can even pull up like what the most recent newsletter we sent out looks like. I'm doing a screen share.
And Evan, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's also the language that allows for all the styling and formatting. Yep. Whereas a text literally just reads as text, probably determined by whatever device or software you're using to read.
So the text part of it is where it pulls out only the text, and that's primarily for people with vision impairment. So that can go directly into like a reader. And so, unless you have like a special reader, you're not getting the text email. You're getting the HTML one. So I'd say the good majority, you're just getting the HTML.
And so that's an accessibility feature.
Yep.
I don't know. Do you happen to know? I know EveryAction has that. I don't know about Action Network or MailChimp. Do you know if they offer the text version too?
I don't. Oh yeah, they do. Okay. So I don't know if the screen share is working right now.
There we go.
So this is what the newsletter looks like in HTML.
Is this before or after we removed all the spam?
This is after. So this is what got sent out.
Wow.
And there's ways to optimize it too, but that's like a standard feature of all the newsletter systems is they kind of write a bunch of junk HTML when it's converting from rich text to HTML.
Yeah, and if you're like us this afternoon, we'll be crossing our fingers that the HTML count does not exceed 100,000 characters.
Yeah, I'll be fixing.
Otherwise, our email won't send. So that's something to be on the lookout for as we wrap up tomorrow morning. You'll see,
subscribe to our newsletter, which is the model of what a good newsletter is.
That's right.
Thank you, Tia.
Thank you. Yeah, who is on
HoustonAction.org/
I got it right here. Sign up with an underscore.
So learn from the pros.
Well, thanks everybody for joining. We appreciate your being here. And please, I just almost went YouTube personality. Went, share, follow, subscribe. But we don't have that feature because we're on Facebook Live.
Smash that friend.
What's that?
Smash that friend button.
Oh, right. Thanks a lot. Appreciate everybody. And did you want to add something, Evan?
Oh, I was just trying to point to the button. It didn't work.
Yeah. Drop it in the comments.
Yeah. But
Pro tips, y'all. Tips.
And no one else can see it.
Hopefully no one gets to this part of the live stream. All right. We'll see everybody later. Thanks.
Cool.
Thanks, Evan. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dr.